What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering video, and today we're going to be checking out Gruul Prowess for the standard format, the go-to aggro deck of the standard format. It's got a lot of things going on here that you really have to like in terms of a format that has so much just efficient removal available to all of the black and red based decks that just seem to be kind of hanging out towards the top tables of the metagame. And this version in particular is kind of drawing some inspiration from Nicholas Odenheimer's build from the Spotlight series in Atlanta, where they ended up actually winning the whole event with something that was considered a meme for a lot of these aggro decks, especially in Duskmourn when it was released. Maybe you know what I'm talking about, but it'll be kind of a surprise for you after we, of course, do some shilling for the channel. So, of course, if at any point you enjoy anything you are watching here, you enjoy the video, you think I'm entertaining, maybe good looking, I don't know, however you're feeling, I would implore you to please leave a like on the video, and of course comment down below how you feel about the Gruul Prowess deck, maybe how you feel about standard in general, really anything and everything, just because I like being able to interact with the community. And of course consider subscribing and ring that notification bell as well, so you know when future videos get posted. We like to talk a lot about the modern, standard, and pioneer formats, as well as do some other longer form videos, just some interesting kind of discussion things, because at the end of the day, we're a bunch of people that absolutely love Magic the Gathering, and as much as I love competitive Magic, and a lot of my videos kind of focusing around that. So if that interests you, subscribe, ring the notification bell, leave likes on the videos, comment down below. Helps the engagement, helps us grow the channel, and I always do greatly appreciate it. It puts a big smile on my face when I get a new notification about someone leaving a comment or anything like that. So it really does go a long way for the channel. On top of all that, I have a podcast on the Casual Spikes Podcast official YouTube channel. Me and my co-host Randy over at MTG with Randy talk about the current RCQ format, do deep dives and metagame breakdowns, and just kind of general thoughts and opinions of major tournaments going on. We actually did one for the Atlanta Spotlight series that took place. We've done it for regional championships, the Pro Tour, World Championships, things like that. So if that also interests you and you want more of that kind of content, you can go ahead and subscribe over to the Casual Spikes YouTube channel. Some other things as well, I have a Discord server. If you want to go join over there, it is linked down in the description below. If you want to follow me on Twitch, that is also linked down there. And finally, I want to thank the sponsor of the channel, Manatraders, who have given me my own code that you can use and sign up for their Manatraders account, where you can go and rent cards to play on Magic Online, where you can go into various different events, something like the Magic Online Leagues, going into challenges, and even the Manatraders free event that goes on just about every month, where the format changes and you can get into qualifier leagues. If you do well enough in qualifier leagues, you do well enough in their actual tournament, you can actually qualify for their invitational tournament at the end of the year, and it all basically super juices the prices if you have a Manatrader subscription. And if you use my code in the description down below, you'll get 5% off your monthly subscription. It's a win-win for everybody, and I want to thank again Manatraders for sponsoring the channel. Now let's go ahead and talk about this Gruul Prowess deck, because that went a lot longer than I really wanted to. Sometimes I get caught up talking, and that's something to look forward to when you're here. But anyway, Gruul Prowess. So the kind of preamble and some things that we need to know about just aggro currently in the standard format is red is absolutely amazing right now. And on top of that too, what we call the mouse package is really fantastic right now. So the mouse package that we're talking about starts with this card, Heartfire Hero. 1 mana, 1/1, that whenever it gets targeted with a spell or ability for the first time each turn, it has to be a spell or ability you control, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. So this is kind of the starter. This is like your ideal turn 1 is playing a Heartfire Hero on turn 1. Good. I'm glad we all got that sorted and figured out. Turn 2, one of the best follow-ups is this card, Manifold Mouse, which for 2 mana, you get a 1/2 that at the beginning of combat on your turn, target mouse you control either gets your choice of double strike or trample until end of turn. So ideally, with no opposition from your opponent, you play a Heartfire Hero on turn 1, you play a Manifold Mouse on turn 2, you give your Heartfire Hero double strike, you end up hitting them for 4 that turn, and then of course you're untapping with a bunch of mana and getting to, potentially play some other spells, and then of course give your creature double strike and or trample to then just continue piling on all the damage. Continuing with this mouse package, you also have a card called Emberheart Challenger, which is another 2 mana 2/2 haste prowess mouse that whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability for the first time each turn, you exile the top card of your library, and until end of turn you may play that card. This is like your kind of card advantage-y piece to that engine where, Heartfire Hero plus Manifold Mouse is very powerful at just being able to deal a ton of damage out of nowhere, where Emberheart Challenger is going to also get big by incentivizing you to play more spells because of its own prowess ability. And of course, we are playing pump spells in this Gruul deck. That is just kind of the nature of some of these Gruul decks. It's also going to get you some card advantage, potentially, hitting future land drops in your post-combat main phase, or even finding other spells that you can play and just, again, continue to pump up your creatures and keep pushing through damage. On top of that, too, you see in some of the other like dedicated mouse decks, I believe, I can't even remember her name, but not really like super important. I think the mouse package kind of entails like these 12 cards, and they are super important to the deck because, again, they end up pushing a lot of damage, or in the case of Emberheart Challenger, allows you to push damage and get card advantage. What makes this deck different from a lot of the other Gruul aggro decks that we've seen in the format, and where we've kind of seen this evolution, is the introduction of this card, Leyline of Resonance. Now, when this card was spoiled in Duskmourn, there was always like, yeah, look at this, you could have like a turn 2 kill, and this deck does have the turn 2 kill in it, or the potential for it, thanks to the card Cacophony Scamp, which we'll get back to here in a minute. But with Leyline of Resonance, essentially, like any Leyline, if it is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield, and then whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single creature you control, you copy that spell and you choose new targets for the copy. So this doesn't mean like you target one thing and then you make a copy, you get to target another, so on and so on. This essentially means that if you play a spell and it targets one thing, you just get the copy at that time, everything's good. Where it gets crazy is, if you remember, when we're looking at cards like Heartfire Hero and Manifold Mouse, it's like, wow, we're going to give Heartfire Hero Double Strike. Wow, Monstrous Rage is here. You're going to give a creature +2/+0, and it's going to create a monster roll token, which is going to give that creature +1/+1 and trample, which is going to be the big thing for us to push damage instead of just our opponent putting a 1/1 or just a bunch of tokens in front of our creature and stopping us from getting in damage. Monstrous Rage in conjunction with that Heartfire Hero plus Manifold Mouse start is going to deal a crazy amount of damage. When you have a Leyline in play, Monstrous Rage is sort of kinda one of the worst cards when you're on that Manifold Mouse plus Heartfire Hero plan, just because putting on the Manifold Mouse too is going to be fine if you choose to attack with it that turn, but really you're not going to end up pushing the most amount of damage you can. You are, however, going to be able to do a ton of things with a card like Turn Inside Out, which between Turn Inside Out, Giant Growth, these are like the spells that are going to give our creature +3 power. Giant Growth having the ability to give our creature +3 defense as well, which is going to help with a lot of the nowhere to runs kind of floating around the format, where necessarily the protection spells like Snakeskin Veil in the deck list that ended up winning the Atlanta Spotlight series was playing 4 Snakeskin Veil, and it was 2 Overprotect as well. That Overprotect also just gave it the power and toughness, plus trample, hexproof, indestructible, all that stuff. But really, with nowhere to run being and just existing in the format, it's not very good to have a lot of these protection spells. You can just kind of go deeper on the actual pump spells, and you can just play actual Giant Growth in those cases. Now, obviously, Snakeskin Veil and those cards help against the other pieces of targeted removal, but with a lot of those decks just kind of adopting nowhere to run, which is going to allow your opponent to get past any ward or hexproof things, you're just better off playing just maybe more pump spells overall. And Giant Growth is a huge one when you have a Leyline of Resonance in play, because you're going to give something +6/+6. Absolutely insane. But to go back to the Cacophony Scamp, we're talking about like this turn 2 kill that this deck can produce, where if you play a Cacophony Scamp and you start the game with a Leyline of Resonance in play, you play Scamp on turn 1, you play your second land. If you have Turn Inside Out, and I believe even one Monstrous Rage at that point works, or just a Giant Growth, Turn Inside Out, some combination of those things, you're going to be able to get Cacophony Scamp up to at least 10 power, hit your opponent with it, and then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it, and if you do proliferate, and when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So you're going to be able to sacrifice itself to its own ability. Even though there is no counters out there to proliferate, you can still sacrifice it to proliferate. That's just something that you can do. And then, of course, you sacrifice it, or when you sacrifice it, you're going to be able to deal the damage directly to your opponent. So there's the potential for a lot of damages to be dealt from that combo. Heartfire Hero also has the ability to do that thanks to the card Callous Sellsword, or really the adventure part of it, Burn Together, which says that target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to any other target, then you sacrifice it. So in the case of Heartfire Hero and Cacophony Scamp, you can pump these up with a bunch of pump spells. Maybe they survive combat and they get in like a bunch of damage. Scamp, obviously, you're going to be able to sacrifice and do the thing anyway. But Heartfire Hero in particular doesn't really have that self-sack outlet. Callous Sellsword / Burn Together is the way that you can throw the Heartfire Hero at your opponent. Say you have like 4 or 5 counters on it. You can then deal 5 damage to your opponent, sacrifice the Heartfire Hero thanks to the Burn Together, just in how it resolves. And then the Heartfire Hero will get its own dice trigger and deal another 5 damage to your opponent, dealing 10 damage total for 1 mana, which is pretty good. And not to mention the amount of damage that the Heartfire Hero would actually get in at that point. On top of that too, this is kind of an interesting thing, thanks to how Callous Sellsword and how Valiant and stuff works, if you cast a Burn Together, say targeting a Heartfire Hero that hasn't already had its ability triggered, you will actually trigger its ability. It'll get the +1/+1 counter before the Burn Together part actually resolves on the card. So if you have like a 3/3 Heartfire Hero, it'll end up going to a 4/4. Then you'll be able to deal 4 damage to your opponent from the Burn Together, and then 4 damage from sacrificing the mouse. So really neat there. Kind of the same thing goes with Slickshot Show Off. This is a card that is also very, very, very explosive. Now, you're not going to get the bonuses of copying spells because Slickshot Show Off wants you to cast non-creature spells, but you're going to get +2/+0 from casting the spells. If you have a Leyline in play, Giant Growth is still going to go pretty crazy with a Slickshot, which means it's going to go up to 3 power, and then it's going to go up to 9 after both Giant Growth resolve on it. Absolutely nuts. And then, of course, using a Callous Sellsword to then throw it at your opponent, you're still going to get that trigger from the Slickshot Show Off to bump up its power and then throw it at your opponent. So just a lot of neat things going here. This also means that you could, in theory, throw multiple creatures at your opponent with Leyline or Resonance to deal a bunch of damage to them. This is just a card that, even though you can't make use of all of it by casting just Callous Sellsword itself, Burn Together is just a very good way of closing out the game when you're just looking for those last few points of damage. Maybe you can't necessarily attack in. You just take one of your creatures, you end up getting them huge, throw it at your opponent, and some of them will even get an additional dice trigger to deal even more damage to them. And that's kind of like the main idea of the deck. The mana base itself just kind of builds itself. 4 Copperline Gorge, 4 Carpolution Forest, 9 Mountain, and 4 Thorn Aspire Verge. There's some of them that I've seen playing like 7 mountains, and I believe 2 of the green-red creature land that I think came from one of the other sets that, of course, I cannot think of at this time. But the land becomes like a 3/4. You can attack, give something +2/+0, and you untap it. That can be pretty useful. Just trying to find like a little bit bigger creature to kind of pump up and then blow them out with different pump spells. But this mana base is pretty straightforward. It's the best way to make sure you get green mana when you are just have like 6 of them in the main deck, and most of those things being in the sideboard, but you mainly are just a red deck at heart. So just having essentially 13 lands that are only going to tap for red mana, and another ones that are going to come into play pretty early on untapped to provide the colors of mana you need is super clutch, and is something that I really like in the standard format, as it feels like the 2-color decks are very powerful in this format, but you're not really necessarily punished for playing a 3-color deck either. Going to the sideboard, 3 Burst Lightning is pretty interesting. Just a burn spell that if you kind of flood out, later in the game, it could just deal 4 damage to something. We're kind of used to seeing things like Witchstalker Frenzy, which costs 4 mana but costs 1 less for each creature that attack this turn, and it's a 1 mana deal 5. Another thing too is like this red deck doesn't need to play Screaming Nemesis, or doesn't feel the need to necessarily play Screaming Nemesis, just because you can't really abuse like a lot of the burn spells and stuff to basically be able to trigger its ability on like your opponent's turn, or to kind of get them in a position where they're going to spend mana to gain life. So that's kind of something that sucks, because I think it's probably the best red creature in the format, but obviously with what we're doing, it doesn't necessarily fit what we're looking to do. 1 Ghost Vacuum, 2 Lithomatic Barrage, just uncounterable, deal 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you deal 5 to it if it's white or blue. This is also like a way that you can kind of get around Ward, specifically Ward, with people still playing a surprising amount of Shelter by Ghost. You have 4 Paw Patch Recruit, which has seen a lot of play in the Selesnya Tokens deck, and in this position too, I would imagine is also a really good deck to play. You can play as a 1-mana 2/1, or you can like fit into your curve on turn 3 to make a 2/1 and a 1/1, and then whenever a creature you control becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you put +1/+1 counter on target creature you control other than that creature. So if your opponent targets the Paw Patch Recruit, you cannot put a counter on the Paw Patch Recruit itself that's being targeted, but you could put it on something else. This is also a way that you can trigger some of the other Valiant things that you have going on, while still also maintaining pressure by just spreading out the counters amongst your other creatures, and again giving you a little bit more oomph when you cast your burn together on, again, Heartfire Hero, Cacophony Scamp, or any one of your other creatures. Paw Patch Formation has been just a really good sideboard card here as of late. Destroy a creature with flying, destroy an enchantment, draw a card, create a food token. Just ends up being some very good cards here, where in the worst case it ends up becoming a card later, creating a food token, kind of whatever. Like, you're not really getting much out of it other than, having an extra permanent on the battlefield that is going to gain you 3 life at some point. And then finally, Questing Druid. The kind of a reason to not play the Leyline package is because normally then you just get to play Questing Druid in your main deck, and this is a deck that looks like it can transform pretty nicely into just taking out the Leylines. You catch your opponent off guard on game 1, and then game 2 and 3, you just try to go into this a little bit grindier, I would say more resilient aggro deck that isn't necessarily all in on the pump spells, because you can even still kind of get blown out by a well-timed removal spell from your opponent. But the Leyline of Resonance package and everything, and all the sweet pump spells that you get to play, and all the big pump spells you get to play, along with the mouse package, just overall makes Gruul Aggro a very appealing deck to play currently in the standard format. I think that you've kind of pushed past playing the mono red decks, even though they have like their own pros and cons. You can play a lot more burn than you can necessarily in the Gruul Aggro decks, but nonetheless, this deck is awesome. It's great for a reason. We see people playing with Leyline, we see people not playing with Leyline. You can kind of make your own judgments whether you think Leyline is still a meme, or if it's actually kind of gone past that point and it's actually a real consideration to actually play in the standard format. And that's the question that we're going to leave off for the comments down below. Do you think that Leyline of Resonance for the Gruul Aggro decks is a meme, or is it actually just it's the real deal, and this could potentially just be the correct build of these Gruul Aggro decks? But I'll leave that for you to decide in the comments down below. Of course, again, if you've enjoyed watching this video at any point, please consider leaving a like on the video. Of course, commenting down below helps with the algorithm, and of course, subscribing and ringing that notification bell so when future videos get posted. Make sure to check all the links in the description down below. Check out the sponsor of the channel, Manatraders, all that fun, happy stuff. And that's gonna do it for me. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and hope to see you all in the next one.